All right, we are on Sunday afternoon over here in my backyard in Halton City, and we got us a fire going here. We got us a young man that has showed some interest in the Texas Rangers living history. So we've been trying to get together and get him over.
And we need new blood for sure.
Yeah, I've mentioned in some of my other YouTube contents, several weeks, how we need young people, and that's what we're hoping we can get this young man interested, and some of his buddies that couldn't make it today, hopefully they'll be able to. So we're just kind of, I've been mowing. We're just kind of showing him a little bit about some of the stuff that we wear, and we're going to actually explain a little bit what it is that we're doing and why we're doing it. And I thought, what better thing to put on YouTube about Texas history than explaining it to a future historian. Putting on these boots here. These are some of my favorites. They've been around for a while, and I believe they fit the part pretty good. I've got a couple of different pairs, but anyway, this is Isaiah Tyrone. Y'all have seen Buck Walker here before, and of course myself, but we got a fire going. Maybe get a couple more guys coming in here a little bit. If not, we'll do another shoot sometime explaining them. Like I said, our average age is in the mid 60s to mid 70s.
To near death.
Yeah, and we need some guys that if we do a history show or a gunfight show, if I take a fall, it ain't gonna be pretty. And if he takes a fall, well, he ain't pretty anyway.
Well,
but anyway, now Isaiah,
I'm pretty ugly.
We sat out here and made a fire the other day, Isaiah, and you see that giant log over there that would take 6 days to burn?
Yes.
That's what Buck decided he wanted to put on the fire that day. And then 10 minutes later said, I got to go, and left me with it. So we're not going to do that today.
Why ain't we going to do that?
Anyway. Well,
I know.
As y'all know, we are.
Look at his face. He's got that in his eyes.
Today we're gonna
fire.
talk as Los
Right.
Diablo Tejanos, the Devil Texas, and we're gonna explain a little bit of what we do to him. Y'all have seen in the very first post in 1823, Stephen F. Austin had brought people down here to what would be Texas, out towards Nacogdoches, over towards what is Louisiana, and he was trying to propagate or to bring people down here to start farms and stuff like that. This was wild country. The people that came, they had to try to protect themselves, and they weren't used to that type of thing. The Indians were running rampant. There were several tribes that put great pain on them, and there was also Mexican robbers and people like that in this area because it belonged to Mexico at that time. So he got permission from Mexico to make a ranging group. Now the word ranger has been around since 15 and 1600s, because if you ever saw some of them old movies that they had these rangers that went out, So anyway, they got permission to do that, and part of the deal was they had to furnish a good horse, a good saddle. They had to have a gun, and ammunition, and kind of an unspoken. They really didn't need to be scared of too much. So
Didn't get paid very good neither.
they got paid. I've read $1.50 something a day, $15 a month, $10 a month. But either way, Stephen F. Austin paid these guys out of his own pocket, and he started, according to where you read, somewhere between 10 and 12 guys. And I've read that these guys could have been a banker that had lost his bank, could have been a farmer, a postman,
Attorney.
An attorney, or just a regular old cowboy, because that kind of money back in the day was pretty dang good. So, and then later on, as we became a state, the ammunition would be furnished. But in the beginning, it was not Texas Rangers. There was no such thing as Texas.
Yeah.
It was just a rangering group. And what they did was range out and protected these people that were coming from Kentucky and
Tennessee.
Missouri, Tennessee, different places like that. So that's how it kind of got started. And of course, they fought lots of battles. They really didn't do too good because the Indians were so proficient fighters, but they did manage to hold them off as best they could. So time rocked on there. You might sign up as a Texas Ranger for 6 weeks, 6 months, or just a few days. A lot of times they were these people that came here from Kentucky, farmers, or going to start a farm or have a few cows, and there were certain times of the year that they couldn't be rangering. They had to be bringing in the crops, So they came and they went, and the history is just fantastic when you get to studying and reading about it. So what we do is we have several guys that live all over Texas, really. We've got them down in South Texas by Georgetown. We've got some over in Mahia. Got some out in White Settlement, Grand Prairie, Ennis.
Magnolia.
Yep, we got a guy that's a judge in
Ennis.
that's one of our group. And so we got a lot of guys, but we're all getting older, so that's where you come in. But so I'm gonna jump ahead for the YouTube video that when Texas became a state, at one time they disbanded the Rangers, then they brought them back, and when they came back, there's a lot of history in there. They came back and they were the Texas Rangers. A lot of people today, they don't know that the Texas Rangers are still operating, that they're an elite law enforcement, and that they are some of the first ones that brought in fingerprinting and things like that. So I tell them in some of our living histories that when you see on the news a crime and you see a guy or two with a silver belly cowboy hat, khaki slacks, white shirt, and a badge like this, you are looking at the Texas Rangers. That's who's called in. So, but anyway, that's a little more modern times. What we do, we love history, all of us do. What we have done is gone through the history books and chosen, it could be a relative or somebody that we like. Buck has A.J. Sowell.
AJ's Andrew Jackson Soul.
And if you look at a picture of him, he's got long hair. There's a resemblance. I picked Captain Jack Coffee Hayes, not because he was one of the most famous Rangers, but because he was shorter, he was a smaller man, and although we don't look exactly alike, there is a slight resemblance. So I chose him, and these guys, they call me Captain most of the time. But we've got Steve Smith, who was one of the very first Rangers.
Yep.
And we've got Bigfoot Wallace, who's going to be here in just a little bit when he gets off work. And he's been with us since the beginning. He's about 20 or 21 years old, so he's one of our only ones. We've got a young man that's about the same age that does Rip Ford. He lives down around Georgetown and does a lot of history reenactments with the different battles and stuff down there. So we have ladies. We've brought ladies, wives, and mothers and grandmothers and stuff into our group, and they're real popular because they do candle making, telling how to churn butter, talking about the crochet, how they started crocheting, and a lot of times my mother does that. She'll hand out some things, little hearts or something that she's crocheted. So we have that. The lady that talks about churning butter, What is that ringing noise? That must be a modern thing.
It's
The lady
modern.
that talks about churning butter, she's 94 years old. And so the kids are interested. It's kind of like a grandma,
Right.
showing it. So,
Right.
but that's kind of what we're all about. And we have started getting phone calls. One of our first things we did, we were invited to Lukenbach. That was our very first thing that we did. Man, we set up, had our guns. We have the guns of the Texas Rangers. We start out with flintlocks, pistols and rifles for display. We got percussion rifles, percussion pistols. We go to the very first successful revolver, which I'm going to show you here, one of them in a few minutes, called a Colt Patterson. And we go up, just keep on going up till about 1870. And there's other Ranger reenactment groups that kind of pick it up from there. We have a pretty extensive collection of guns that belong to the group, and then the guys will bring in their stuff also. And we learn about those guns and take turns introducing. Hello, I'm Jack Coffee Hayes. Let me tell you a little bit about the Texas Rangers, and I tell the story just like I'm telling it to you. It wasn't Texas, it was Rangers, and then progress on to it. Captain Jack, he had some Indian battles experience up east. He came down here. Really, he wanted to go to the Alamo, but he missed it. And like so many of the young men, he was a surveyor. We have some old surveying equipment that we set up and kind of show people with the old brass and all. And a lot of these young guys, they were surveyors, so the roads and towns and cities and stuff that we have, especially down in the San Antonio, all that area in there, they may have played a part in that. But that's part of the history of that. But he came down as a surveyor, and he missed the Alamo, and he joined up with the Texas Rangers, and has quite a bit of history. There, during that Civil War time, they came out. These guys, these Texas Rangers or Rangers, were fighting Indians that could shoot 10 to 12 arrows by the time they could load. With the black powder guns, they were kind of like a cavalry, the Rangers, but they weren't really, because they fought off on foot. Because it's just almost impossible, no matter what you might see on TV, to load black powder and ball and everything on the back of a horse with arrows being shot at you. Right. So they would always dismount. They usually carried one rifle, whether it be a flintlock or a percussion when they came out, and one or two pistols. So the Indians were really smart in warfare. They knew that when they shot those guys shot 2 to 3 times, they were dismounting to reload. And a lot of times they would hold back, and that's when they would make their attack. And like I said, I saw a deal on TV the other day where a guy that wasn't even good was shooting arrows while another one was trying to reload his rifle, and he shot 10 arrows. So you could imagine if you're standing over here trying to reload, wind blowing a little bit, powder, and arrows are, whether you're hit or not, the arrows coming at you. So that's interesting to me. That's an interesting history thing. But Captain Jack Coffee Hayes, he believed if you were going to fight a Comanche, you needed to fight like a Comanche. So during this period of time, Colt came up with a revolver, and it was made in Patterson, Pennsylvania, I believe is where it was. And this is a replica of that gun right here. It was really your first gun that looked kind of like any resemblance. But if you'll notice, I always, when we do our living history, I always tell the kids, what's wrong with this gun, And most of the time the boys will, well, there's no trigger. Ah, you're right, but there is. And I'll show them. When you cock, the trigger drops. That's cool. And so this was a 5-shot. Although it was made a big world of difference, you had to take the pin, unscrew, take the pin out, pull the barrel, take off the cylinder. You had a little special little deal that you put the powder in there, and then you hooked it on, and you drove the ball down in there, and then So most of the time they carried two, unless one of their comrades went down, and then they may carry three, or may carry four. There's a cartoon picture of a Ranger that's got about 5 or 6 pistols on and 4 or 5 knives and stuff like that. But anyway, this was Colt Patterson, and the Texas Navy got these. A lot of people don't know there was a Texas Navy back in the Civil War times. But they got these guns and decided that they didn't need them. If you look at it, you'll see some of the engraving on there. Stagecoach.
Oh, yeah.
Got some guys that look like they could be sailors, horseback. Really, really intricate work on there. But anyway, they decided that they didn't like them and didn't want them. So Captain Jack Coffee Hayes was involved with Walker getting some of those for the Texas Rangers, and they trained, and probably the first real known battle was called the Battle of Walker Creek, down below Fredericksburg at a town called Sisterdale. I went there before trying to see if I could find the battlefield, but it's on private property. So, but anyway, they fought the Indians, and as usual, a lot of times the Indians would send 4 or 5 and make you think that that's all they were, and then they'd run, and they were counting on you following them, and when you top the hill, there's 80.
Yeah, right.
Well, that didn't work this time. They had these pistols, and when we went, the Rangers went after them and topped the hill, and saw the Indians. The Indians didn't know that the Rangers were carrying these. So when they shot their rifle, which was still a percussion or a flintlock, the lever action and all that hadn't been made yet, and they threw it down, and the Indians wanted to attack. They were waiting on them to get off their horses and reload, and they didn't do it. And so they wanted to attack, not knowing that each Ranger had 10 more shots instead of 1 or 2 more shots. So that was it ended up being a running battle for a while, and I forget how many Indians were killed, but the Rangers sustained minimal damage. But from that time on, this gun right here changed warfare, Indian warfare, and all warfare in the West. Even though, like I said, it was a little bit cumbersome, the way you had to reload it, and a lot of them would carry 2 and 2 cylinders that were already loaded. So really, you could come up with about 20 shots. One of the things that I always mentioned was when you cock it and this trigger comes down, that could be problematic also, because if you went to slam it in your holster and the trigger was down like this, there's a chance, that it would break it off, and then you got a pretty good club to fight with. So anyway, yeah, the Colt Patterson, man, I love it. I haven't shot this one.
Colt Patterson or Walker?
This is the Colt Patterson.
Oh, okay.
And then
I'm sorry.
a few years later, Sam Walker got together with Colt, and they came up with the
Dragoon?
Not the Dragoon, the Colt Walker.
Colt Walker.
Which
okay.
was a almost 5-pound gun. You see Gustus McCrae carry one in Rose and Dove. I've always said they called it a horse pistol. I've always said Gus carried it on his hip, but no way. Your britches would be down.
Right.
But they called it a horse pistol, and it actually had a holster that hooked over your saddle horn and hung down. Usually you carried 2. They were 45 caliber. They were accurate for a mile.
Wow.
No, take that back. Accurate for 100 yards with a pistol, and which is pretty sweet right there. I seen a guy on one of these YouTube deals shooting one of them at 100 yards, and he was doing pretty good. But they were they held the same amount of powder as a rifle and all that stuff. That was a Colt Walker. But it being so heavy, they came out with a smaller version, which was the Dragoon. A lot of people heard about the Colt Dragoon. It was smaller, weighed less, a little bit smaller cylinder, didn't hold quite as much powder, but then again, it was still real accurate. So that's when time allows, that's one of the stories that we try to tell in our living history. And we, like I said, if you choose to join our group, and we help you figure out somebody that maybe was tall, slender, one of the younger guys, we would ask you to learn everything you can, but you're going to got to be perfect. But we don't want to tell somebody something that's not true. The Texas Ranger Museum in Waco, I interviewed some of that group. They're a different group, good guys. But one of the ladies mentioned that they try to be historically correct as possible because we can't be outside telling history to you people, and you go in that museum and see some of the real stuff. We can't, we don't want to do that. So
yeah, you don't want to walk in there looking like a Walmart wide or.
Yeah, we strive. We're not perfect.
Right.
We strive to be as historically correct as we can. I'm sure, sitting right here, that several of the guys that really know what they're talking about could just cut me to pieces with what I'm wearing. But I'm trying constantly.
Right.
I have some shirts and stuff that I bought at thrift stores and things like that with no collar, maybe a vest that had collared vest, that's how I got started. And as I find out, a lot of them get started like that.
Yep.
And then as we get a little extra money and learn, we can, you can get online, or you can find somebody like myself or Buck or someone that says, hey, I put on a few pounds, I can't wear these pants anymore. Does anybody out there need a pair? They might sell you a pair real cheap, or to get you started, get going. I've got a shirt over there that I brought out here to give to you if you're interested in it. It's one of the first ones I bought. Hadn't worn it in a long time, and it's got a collarless, and it's a good shirt. So anyway, that's kind of what we're about, is to teach history. There's many websites, many books. I read out of one book. I don't know if I brought it. I laid it over there, called the Texas Rangers. Got lots of history in it that I read some stories out of. It's The Images of America by Chuck Parsons, and it's got a picture right there of Texas Rangers. And you got to go through and look at the pictures, because there's your Colt Patterson. There's Colt right there. You got to go through and look at the pictures to see how these guys, how they really look. You can't be watching Hollywood TV shows, because the guns, the holsters, one of the worst things in the world is the hats.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
This is Jack Coffee Hayes. I don't know if y'all can see this or not. That's who I chose to portray. We're both dark-haired. I'm starting to get a little more gray in my beard, but I portrayed him because of that. We got a guy here that's, they called him Old Roof, Cicero Perry. He was shot like 20 times and survived. So, anyway.
Still didn't get the hint.
Anyway, that's kind of what we do. And as we go on, I was telling Isaiah here, as we go on with the YouTube channel, I'm fixing to take a sabbatical for a few months from work, where I can put more time into this. It'll be less sitting around in a modern backyard and more out in the woods by a campfire. We won't be having a fire ring and some 2x4s and stuff that we're using for our firewood. And we will try to work real hard to be like a Texas Ranger would. Camping back in the 1800s, I can't imagine anybody in 1823 saying, "Hey, Buck, let's go camping this weekend."
That's the same thing as let's go sit in the living room. Okay, that sounds like
Yeah,
fun.
Right. So I have bought doing some investigations and stuff. So of course I've said I don't have a horse right now, and a lot of them were horseback. But a ranger carried minimal. He carried saddlebags, and most of what he had in there was most everything he needed. He would carry some beef jerky or some pemmican, some what they called corn dodgers, things like that, and they needed more room for their ammo than they did their other stuff. And me and Isaiah were like we were talking earlier. We try to be historically correct, but certain times of the year we can't be historically correct. If we're camping in the woods and we're hungry and we see a doe, we can't go shoot a doe because it's not going to be deer season. They could,
So you open up a can of Vienna sausages.
So we might be able to shoot a hog, or if there's no season on squirrel or rabbit or whatever in that area, we could do that. Most of your stock tanks and stuff, we can go fish without a fishing license if we're not on a main body of lake, like that. So, but that's the kind of stuff we're going to start doing and bringing out to you guys on our content every Tuesday at 2:00. So, anyway, I'm gonna see if Isaiah. I threw a bunch of stuff at him at one time.
Okay.
I ain't gonna put you on the spot, but I am gonna put you on the spot. First off, to say, is this something that's kind of piquing your interest a little bit?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Have you got any questions? It's a little soon to ask questions, but you may have something right off the bat.
I don't have anything right off the bat, no.
Okay.
But
Well,
you're definitely interested, and I really want to.
Okay. I was going to tell your buddies, if he's got some friends that are interested also that couldn't make it today, but I was going to tell them, we have fun, but we are extremely serious about what we're doing. So don't think we won't cut up a little bit, but there's a time for cutting up and there's a time for not cutting up.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
that's right.
And
the group of guys I was going to bring were
and another thing I was going to mention to you was that the majority of this group, and I'm proud to say it, are believers. We believe in our Savior.
Yep.
Sometimes we can't come do something because we are committed to our church family, and we'll get somebody else to. So that's to me that's real important for anything to be successful. I know Buck feels the same way about it.
Yeah.
I've been to his men's ministry.
Yeah, I always got to
like
put
that.
God first.
Yep.
I'm into that.
So that's good. So anyway, we I promised these guys I was gonna feed them something.
Yeah,
and
when's
it's
chow?
gonna be
Where's
modern.
that?
Gonna be modern day hot dogs. So I may shut the camera off for a little while, and we may eat, and then as the sun goes down.
Yeah, you don't want to see how we eat like a bunch of hogs.
Talk a little bit more
Maybe
as
a little
the
bit
sun
worse.
goes down. So anyway, they'll give Isaiah time to maybe come up with a question or two.
Yeah.
I mentioned to him, and I mentioned earlier that hats are important. The way your hat is, this crease right here was one that was used. A lot of them were like this. They just kind of call that a slouch hat because that's the way it was.
Yeah.
I brought a hat that I had picked up right here to see if it fits him or if he can make it fit him, because I'm going to send him with it, and a shirt and stuff like that. So anyway, at that, since the smoke is going here and blowing in our face and our camera, I'm going to shut off for just a little while, and we're going to eat some hot dogs and stuff like that, and then just enjoy sitting around the fire and come back and talk a little bit more here in just a little bit.
Hot dog is also known as reprocessed brisket.
Right?